Yes, I'll start it.
No, it's not. It's already placed. You already see.
So our investigation was never ended. This is sort of beginning of investigation. We continue. Hopefully, we're gonna have our ongoing events dealing with life after death. Reincarnations. There are many issues that many questions we have, and we can talk about it always. And it's like open ending. So everybody just chip in your ideas. I hope we can expand more ideas when you leave this place. Everybody hopefully gets something out of it. So I have a survey question that people can, if you can help me out. And I'm going to pass this around.
What's your name?
Oh, sorry about that. My name is Shota. Shota, yes. And later on after video, we're going to just quickly introducing each other. After that, we're going to make a circle of discussion after watching this video. So.
Now that's playing on this player.
It is great. Thank you. Great. Thank you. Great.
Yeah.
By the way, this is the day before Halloween. And Halloween means it's sort of like spooky. The idea of a spooky ghost is a spooky ghost, something that we're afraid of. But actually, I really hope that everybody can understand that ghost is not really spooky, but actually they want to communicate. Oh yeah, I'm going to give you a quick, if you can kind of run down each questions and scale of 0 through 5,
Maybe
5 being,
survey too.
I'm really agreed. Yeah, and the 0 means I don't have any interest or no disagree. Yeah. So scale of 1 through 5. If you can help me out, I'm going to ask the same question after this video discussion. So I'm going to give another day, but it's going to be first survey before. Thank you. Great.
Anyone
It is. Anyone with some pen here? It's pretty awesome if somebody had experiences with ghosts. I mean, that would really, yeah. And after you finish, you just keep it with you. I want you to just keep it with you. And see after discussions, your idea had changed, going to change, you're going to stay as you are, perhaps. Great. And I want you to hold it with you. Thank you very much. Okay, great. So Jacob, ready to show this video? Okay, great. Hold on, I'm gonna turn this lights off here, and we're gonna watch this video called "A Life After Investigation."
In the mid-1990s, in the tiny English village of Scole, one of the most remarkable experiments ever attempted in communication with the dead took place in the cellar of this house. The Scole experimental group who conducted these experiments consisted of Diana and Alan Bennett, two of Britain's most accomplished mediums, as well as organisers and investigators Robin and Sandra
So it doesn't
Foy.
make sense to just video it because we already have it videoed. So we'll just turn it off for now and then video when it becomes live.
For 5 years, twice a
Slowly.
week, the group would meet in this tiny cellar. Here the Bennetts would go into trance, allowing what they say were the voices of the dead to speak through them.
What happened here during the skull experiment was very successful and a dramatic effort which proved conclusively to us that life goes on after we all die.
Diana and Alan Bennett have also participated in physical mediumship for decades. They joined the Skull experiment in 1993. But both claim their astonishing abilities began long before this.
My first discovery of being a medium was when I was a child. I used to see spirit, I used to hear things and be aware of things that other people weren't aware.
When I was young, I saw spirits that would come and show themselves to me.
I
I think the greatest effort come from the spirit side. I mean, without them, you can sit there and nothing will happen.
But a great deal did happen, more in fact than any other mediumship experiment ever conducted. And according to the Skoll Group, this success was due to the efforts of a group of deceased personalities on the other side. They called this group the Spirit Team.
A spirit team was a team of spirit personalities who had lived a life on this earth, and several of them had been scientists whilst they were here.
The Skoll Group say instructions on how to conduct the experiments were received from the Spirit Team, speaking via the mediums.
If you put your hand into the bowls.
Some of the initial experiments involved photography. These began conventionally enough, with the boys being told to load a film into a camera and place it on the table. But after this, things began to get very strange.
We heard the camera moving round over our heads, and clicking and being wound on by spirit.
In total darkness, so that in reality, nothing should have showed up on the film. But when the film was developed, there were amazing pictures. Wartime pictures of St. Paul's, of a bus that was blown apart in the Blitz. Quite amazing stuff. It was never explained to us exactly why we got these particular pictures, other than the fact that we had a separate photographic spirit team working with us at that stage, who were practicing their art and seeing what they could achieve.
Some films contained images of faces, including human faces, in various stages of formation.
There were a series that appeared to represent bubbles and various other things coming together, partial faces, etc. We were told that what we were seeing were areas of communication within the spirit world.
The Skoll Group believed these faces were images of deceased people, which were somehow projected from the other side. To them, this theory was confirmed with the appearance on another Skoll film of this blurry profile. Communicators through the mediums informed them that it belonged to a man named Kingsley Fairbridge, but died in 1924.
We were put in touch in a very obscure way with his daughter, who was happy to agree that that was a picture of her father.
In the next experiments, the Skoll Group say they were able to create these images not only in total darkness, but without the use of a camera.
We were asked by the spirit team to put a totally unopened Polaroid 35mm film just in its plastic container. If the spirit team felt that they'd achieved a result, we were asked to develop it.
This could be done immediately in a special processing machine.
You can imagine our surprise when we brought this film up that never been opened, put it through the processor and viewed it, and there was images and faces and writing. How do you explain it was there, you know?
In order to counter accusations that they faked these images, the group invited independent investigators to select the films.
I checked the box, which was factory sealed, identifiable by the glue marks.
He then broke the seal, signed the plastic film container, and carried it into the session where it remained on the table. But could it have been switched?
I'm 100% certain that the film I selected was the same film that was returned to me at the end of the session.
The film was immediately processed in front of him.
Halfway along the film, we could see a Latin statement. The spirit team had said that they'd worked on the film, and lo and behold, there it was.
Do I believe in an afterlife? Yes, I do, completely. I had an experience where I met a medium on the street, and she described my great-grandparents, my grandparents, my great-aunt, who have all passed away, their names, the way that they died, and told me that they were all around me and walking with me, and never really have left me or never really leave any of us. So completely believe in that.
News of the remarkable events at Skol reached Italy, where the Skol group travelled to meet one of the world's most unusual mediums. Marcello Bacci amazes visitors and scientific investigators who say they can hear the dead speaking through his old vacuum tube radio. This extremely rare form of mediumship is also called direct radio voice, or DRV, and is virtually unknown to the public. With it, experimenters believe that two-way conversations with the dead are possible. But could the Skol group communicate through Bacci's radio?
Madam, are you there? Hello? Yes. Hello, madam. Thank you, madam.
After this, scientist Harry Oldfield, a colleague of the Skol group, attempts further communication.
We would like to ask the question of the appearance of your space.
Can you tell something about Skol?
Thank you. Will the work progress? Thank you. This is what I needed to know.
Experts say that Bacci's ability to invite the spirits to speak through his radio is usually so reliable he conducts regular sessions. This seems highly probable, but these grieving parents don't think so. The walls are littered with pictures of dead loved ones. Parents clearly recognize the voices as belonging to their departed children.
Io sono certa che è mio figlio così come le altre mamme, perché i ragazzi quando si presentano prima chiamano la mamma, il nome della mamma e poi il loro nome. A parte poi che la voce è quella di mio figlio, l'ho già detto, quindi è inutile che lo ridica.
Non dimentica tuo figlio, se ti vuoi stato
però nel tempo ho avuto delle prove che solo io potevo sapere e che hanno dato la mia, diciamo, la mia sicurezza di che questa era la prova che mio figlio era ancora vivo.
For the bereaved, it's an experience that rescues them from torment.
La mia vita è la nuova vita, io dico sempre la vita di prima, poi si è fermata quando lui se n'è andato, ricominciata quando l'ho sentito, diversa.
We wish to know more with respect.
But are these radio voices just a clever hoax? Not according to scientists who have subjected Bacci's mediumship to a battery of tests. One of the leading Italian investigators is Paolo Presi and his colleagues from Il Laboratorio, an organization that uses the most stringent methods of science to investigate paranormal claims.
He is a medium. Surely is a medium because all happen when he is present on the experiments.
Using software endorsed by the FBI, Il Laboratorio have conducted voice print analysis. Like a fingerprint, a voice print is unique. It can therefore be used to determine someone's identity with near certainty. They compared voice prints from two audio samples. One was the voice of Chiara Lenzi, recorded before she died. The other came out of Bacci's radio after her death and was clearly recognized by her father. The comparison produced a 97% match. Despite this startling evidence, skeptics claim that the voices could be faked by transmitting them from a remote location. But Dr. Emanuele Toriello, who has been investigating Bacci for decades, believes this is impossible. Dr. Toriello was present during key scientific experiments that he says eliminated any possibility of remote transmission. One of the first of these experiments involved putting Bacci's radio inside a special device that shields it from all radio signals. Yet still, the voices continued.
Second point, the radio was switched off, and though the voices were going through. The third and main point, that the tube or the valves of the radio were totally removed. Still the voice were going through. So you tell me how it's possible.
Thank you for your hard work.
But just how difficult was it to summon the departed?
I think possibly we sat about twice a week for a year before we really got anything significant happen, just minor phenomena up to then.
But the group's determination and patience paid off. By 1995, visitors were reporting that the Skull Hole was alive with extraordinary phenomena. According to the Skull Group, their spirit communicators requested that they place this empty glass dome on their table.
The glass dome was very important to the skull work. Creative energy stored in the dome and was used by the spirit team to produce the phenomena that had happened at Skull.
In this remarkable photograph, the energy can actually be seen radiating out from the dome. But since these phenomena are so unusual, the group knew that without careful independent scrutiny, their experiments would be dismissed as fake. Therefore, the group allowed their experiments to be monitored by a team of scientists and paranormal investigators from the Society for Psychical Research, or SPR, based in London. For over a century, the SPR has specialized in examining paranormal phenomena in an unbiased and scientific way. Among its members have been some of Britain's most accomplished scientists, including a dozen Nobel laureates. Its investigators have exposed many fake mediums. They are not easily fooled. One of the leading researchers into Skull was veteran SPR member Montague Keane.
Initially, we were all pretty sceptical because what had been claimed seemed so way out.
Another key researcher was Dr. Arthur Ellison, an emeritus professor of electrical engineering and a former president of the SPR.
No scientist of any kind would ever say that anything could not possibly happen.
The third principal investigator was research psychologist Dr. David Fontana. Professor Fontana is one of the world's most respected paranormal investigators.
Paranormal is that mysterious area behind the seen and the known world. And since most of the world is unseen and unknown, and most of the world is full of mystery, for me it's a fascinating and absorbing area.
To preclude the possibility of fraud, these scientists were allowed to inspect the cellar and all its contents before and after sessions. All participants had to empty their pockets and leave their belongings outside. The cellar had only one entrance, and this door was kept locked during all sessions. Despite these precautions, the incredible events at Skull continued unabated, and the SPR investigators reported what they saw in graphic terms.
We saw coloured lights, we saw materializations, we had direct voices, that is spirit voices talking from the air. We were touched by the spirits. We saw a whole range of phenomena which could not be mistaken by three investigators such as ourselves.
In the spirit of openness, the Skull Group allowed more investigators to scrutinize their sessions. These included leading scientists from several disciplines, even a professional magician. One of the scientists was the internationally renowned biologist and author, Dr. Rupert Sheldrake.
Science has done very little to investigate the afterlife or reincarnation. Most materialists assume that both of them are impossible. And so there's a kind of dogmatic denial by some scientists of the possibility of these things. But I wouldn't say that was a scientific understanding. I would say that was a dogmatic, ideologically motivated dismissal. The only way to have a scientific understanding is to do the research.
We had a number of different professors of different disciplines to come, and sometimes they could test their expertise against the expertise on the other side. For example, Professor Archie Roy, who's an astronomer and specialises in the movement of celestial bodies, had a discussion with the other side about celestial mechanics. And he said afterwards that he thought there were only about half a dozen people in the country who would know exactly what they were talking about.
Such evidence is gold dust to researchers, as it is unlikely to have been fabricated by the mediums who possess no academic training in this area. Although the scientists found this sort of evidence impressive, they still needed to eliminate any possibility of fraud taking place under the cover of darkness. Therefore, the Skoll group devised several controls to help eliminate this possibility. One of these controls involved all participants wearing luminous wristbands. These bands were attached with Velcro, so they could not be removed without attracting attention. They also requested the use of night vision equipment.
We persistently asked them to accept infrared cameras, and they said not yet, it would interfere with the energy in some way. So we had to accept this with great reluctance.
We were told that this phenomenon could be developed in the light, but if it were, it would take an awfully long time to produce, years and years, rather than a few months that it actually took us.
Critics saw this insistence on darkness as an excuse to hide fraud, but participants to the Skoll experiment were not always in total darkness.
Whoa, look at you!
There were various shapes, generally like a pea-sized light, and it had substance. They would come and sit on your hand, and you could feel them.
They were intelligently directed and intelligently moving, and would be responsive to our wishes, whether expressed or silent.
The gyrations were sometimes so rapid that it almost left like a circle of light going over here and over there. Sometimes two lights would appear and just stare at me within inches of my eyes.
I thought at first that the lights must be small light-emitting diodes suspended on the end of nylon fishing line.
Then suddenly a light would start to do a tap dance on the table, bouncing up and down on the table, and you could hear it click as it rebounded from the table. And suddenly
it went pop, went through the table and came out the other side. Now, no nylon fishing line explanation would account for it going through an apparently solid, well, it was a solid object, a table.
The lights also had another rather strange trick up their sleeve, if I may talk about lights as having sleeves, and that was to pass through bodies.
I was actually used as a guinea pig in the early days to see how it felt and to develop the phenomenon. And this light would actually enter through my chest, and then 3 minutes later it would probably pop out of the arm or something and disappear across the room. This was being developed to produce a healing phenomenon.
I have this bad knee, and at one point we had a light that was moving around the room and rested on my knee for a minute and suddenly moved inside my knee.
Yeah, she just went into my bad knee.
I could feel it moving around on my knee, and then all of a sudden shot out the back of my leg and took off. The pain was greatly reduced, and the swelling that had been in it that day was gone, and that was a huge, wonderful thing to happen.
Visitors declared themselves delighted by these displays, but they were astonished to hear voices of what they say were spirit personalities talking through the mediums.
We had 1,000 hours of communication during the Skoll experiment. 1,000 hours of continuous communication with the spirit world.
Be quiet, be quiet, be quiet.
Emily, when did you live on the earth? Oh, a long time ago now. 19th century? Yes.
In this dramatic form of spirit communication, the mediums go into trance, during which time, they say, spirits take over their bodies and speak through them.
It's the love that connects people, and the rest doesn't matter a jot.
So what's it like to supposedly talk to the dead in this way?
It becomes very natural, and actually talking to somebody who is deceased, if you like, is a natural thing. Purely and simply because it's the same as you talking to me here in this room at this very moment. There's no difference, other than the fact that we are aware that they're no longer in this world.
But could the mediums have just been acting? The researchers didn't think so.
The voices were quite different from those of the mediums themselves, and the personalities behind the voices were not only quite different, but were very consistent. Even the accents were.
But it wasn't just the consistency of the accents that impressed the researchers. They reported that the personalities also remembered every detail of all conversations spoken to visitors over a 5-year period. Add to those skills the ability to read minds. This apparently occurred when a female spirit spoke to the group.
She would tell us what was going to happen, she would comment on what we were doing, and sometimes what we were thinking. She would answer our questions quite frequently before we'd actually asked them, which was quite embarrassing sometimes.
Thank you for your warm appreciation of what we're trying to do.
This communicator identified herself as the spirit of a Mrs. Emily Bradshaw.
Mrs. Bradshaw, who was a very commanding figure, a lady of the upper class Victorian or Edwardian lady, she sounded like that.
We continue from our side of life to influence people still in the body.
But what's it like for the mediums to have these ethereal communicators speak through them?
Those sensations become more and more intense and build up to a point where I feel the personality actually taking part of my senses over. I become more and more unaware of my own body and also more and more unaware of my own thoughts.
Back at school, visitors reported seeing and especially hearing these objects materialize from out of nowhere. In the language of physical mediumship, these objects are called apports.
An apport is an object which is quite solid, which is brought from one location to another during an experimental session, but in so doing apparently passes through solid walls, doors, etc. Well, the total number of apports that we had during the experimental sessions was about 80 or even more. Whilst we were sitting here, this object would arrive, just materialise, and arrive on the table. As it arrived, that's the sort of noise it would make.
Despite the fact that witnesses heard a loud bang every time an apport arrived, no matter how small, skeptics have dismissed this phenomenon as objects merely thrown into the air. But the appearance of these apports are not so easy to explain away. These newspapers arrived in pristine condition, despite having originated in the 1940s. The scientists knew that an old newspaper could easily be copied and printed onto modern paper, so Montague Keane had the suspect newspaper analysed.
We took it to the leading research station in England, indeed in the world, on paper and printing, and it was absolutely clear from their report that first of all it was done on letterpress, which has gone out of existence virtually since the early 1970s, I would say. It was newsprint produced during wartime, which lacked certain chemicals which you couldn't get hold of. So this was a genuine article which appeared 50 years after the event, but no one has been able to explain how it got there.
So where did all these apported objects come from?
We were told by the spirit team that they were never stolen, but were basically objects that had been lost or discarded, or at one time been owned by the spirit personality that brought them forward.
Back in Italy, we were given unique access to film one of Bacci's private seances. As the seance progressed, the medium went into trance. We were hoping to capture what visitors to Skull said they had witnessed, the levitation of solid objects. However, minutes later, we were asked to switch off the night shot camera, but secretly, we kept it running. And what we captured was truly astonishing. This heavy oak table rose into the air. But levitations were not the only phenomena we witnessed during these seances. Like the skull experiment, visitors to Baci's centre say they have received apported objects. This woman is one of them.
Questo è un apporto che ho ricevuto al centro Baci. Al centro Baci succedono spesso queste cose ed è incredibile. Uno potrebbe dire le hanno messi là, se lo sono inventati, ma non è così, perché chi l'ha vissuto sa che questo è vero.
Once again, we were permitted to use night shot cameras in the hope of capturing the arrival of an apport. We were not disappointed. With the medium in trance, the camera crew were astonished when, out of nowhere, they felt these flowers falling on them. With the lights on, people reacted in amazement at just how many flowers had appeared.
This one is going in his head.
As they collected them, we continued our filming.
The presence, the physical presence, my mother, my father, and my sister, all in solid form, standing in front of me, all of whom I was able to hold, to embrace, and carry out conversations with them. I witnessed it so many times, it just becomes a normal thing.
These are great experiences, you see. Again, I must stress, it changes your paradigm. You go in thinking none of this can be true, but after experience, after experience, after experience, it gradually dawns on you, hey, there's something going on here that we can't explain by normal scientific laws, but which nevertheless exists.
Let's run the other things, 2 minutes.
Yeah.
In a region near the border of Syria known as Golan Heights, a boy says he remembers being murdered. At first, no one believed him. That is, until he led village elders to the spot where he remembers being buried. The villagers dug up the spot where the boy says his former corpse remains, and sure enough, there was a skeleton there. Mysteriously, a large axe mark on the skeleton corresponds to a birthmark on the boy's head. The boy says he was murdered with an axe and then led village elders to the spot where the murderer buried the weapon. Sure enough, they dug up an axe. The boy then led people to the village he was from in his past life and told them of his previous name. When people of the boy's former home village were asked about a man going by this name, they said the man had disappeared 4 years earlier and never returned. Remember, the boy was 3 years old. But strangest of all, the boy recounted exactly who his murderer was. When the boy confronted his killer, the man's face turned a pale white and he started acting very suspicious. Once the boy led elders to the exact spot of his corpse and the murder weapon, the killer gave in and admitted to the crime, for which he ended up being charged with. Is the boy a product of reincarnation? Are we all perhaps reincarnations of our past lives?
Great, thank you. We could probably pass, we can make a nice little circle for discussions right now. If you need some coffee, the coffee is right here. We will make up, if you can break up some chairs and make a little circle here, then we can make a discussion.
All right.
Yeah, let's kind of break up this chair. I'll just put the lights up here.
I'm Shota, I'm just filming the entire thing and we're gonna edit it afterwards.
Oh, yeah.
If that's what-
Sure, okay. So what do you think here? Yeah, we can probably, she was clearly gonna help me out too, these things. Oh, really? Yeah, we can make a circle on this one right here, so everybody can sit around. Yes.
I'm fascinated with the scenes of ghost things and what it's like through the walls. That's something from my brain. There you go. Yeah.
Stay awake.
Was it?
I said it gets late in a way. I've seen this a lot of times, so I was dozing off a little bit.
Actually, maybe I needed it, but yeah.
But did any of that impress you?
An interesting film.
It's an interesting film, isn't it? But the whole thing is online. I only took 30 minutes of it. It's a 90-minute piece. You go to Afterlife Investigations, yeah, on YouTube, you'll see even more. They instructed the spirit team, told them to set up a video feedback loop where they had a video camera aimed at mirrors so that the video camera was looking at its own viewfinder, mirrors. And if you do that in a room with lights, you get just this white, weird thing. But they had the lights off, but they still got stuff. And that was some of the things that, I had to cut it, so I left a little bit out. But they instructed them on several different things, with the film, with the glass globe.
Okay, great. Everybody can sit on some chairs. All right, Becky, good. And, yeah.
Grab a little for coffee. Hey, what's your name? Seth. Seth. Nice to meet you, Seth. Nice to meet you. My name's Art.
Your name is Seth? Mm-hmm. That's funny. I'll tell you why that's funny in the discussion.
I think I know Becky.
You know?
Yeah.
Okay. That's something I wanted to bring up in the discussion. And what do you know? Seth is. Hey, Brad.
Hey, how you doing?
Good to see you.
Is
Did you get my text?
No, you texted
Yeah, I
me?
texted you. Because I asked for Dave's number. I wanted to invite him. Did you get my text? Maybe I have it on.
maybe that's it. I don't hear it.
Yeah, you should put my name in, so you know my number.
Okay, great.
I didn't hear it. Yeah,
I
anyway,
had to
there
ask
you
Art
go.
for your number today. I didn't have a number.
Great, I'd like to introduce Art and also Becky. They're going to be moderating a discussion, so it's going to be hopefully a wonderful discussion. It's going to be, it is okay, but we're going to keep exactly 1 hour, no less. I mean, exact 1 hour, but I got to give them a cue for 5 minutes to stop, so we keep it within just time, 1 hour, and we can have a good discussion together. Okay, Art, yeah, you want to lead up the discussions?
Yeah, I'd like to do a little live poll, so to speak, a show of hands, so we can kind of see how people think about all this. So with a show of hands, how many people believe in ghosts at this point? So that's pretty unanimous, except for you, right?
Very good job.
How many people have actually had some kind of encounter with a ghost where they really felt like they saw something? You two, and you, and you. Okay, so we have 5 people that actually feel like they've had an encounter. How many people have consulted mediums? And actually, and were you impressed with they seem to really be on?
Yeah, I've done that too. Anybody over here consult a medium?
Is that same as seeing a fortune teller?
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
I mean, well, and if they talk to spirits and give you something back that you're impressed with.
I don't remember.
Okay.
It was a while ago.
Well, one of the things I personally think is that we all can have this ability to talk to the spirit realm. But I think if we practice some of the things that these people do with meditation and just trying to do it, imagining what the spirits will tell you, you're going to get benefits. Like I have a friend who was in the hospital dying, and his kidneys were out of control. They couldn't control his kidneys. They had him on dialysis. And he had a broken love affair. The girl died mysteriously. And so I led him through, over the phone, I had him imagine a conversation with the girl. And he imagined her talking to him and told me, you know, she's saying this, and I told him to ask her this. And he cried a lot. And then 20 minutes later, he called me back and he said, the doctors are in my room jumping up and down. My kidneys have stabilized. And they think that they did it with their medications. He said, but you and I know what happened. Because they were doing those medications for 2 weeks and nothing was working. But as soon as he had that imagined encounter with the ghost of, or the imagination of his girlfriend, his kidneys stabilized. So there's lots of potential here for a lot of interesting things, including just discussion, you know, that gets people together. And when you bring this spiritual thing into your life, you start seeing coincidences. That I personally believe that the spirits not only can make flowers fall into the room, but they could guide us to make certain decisions, to be at the right place at the right time, to help us with our lives. And that they, in turn, we can help them. That they may suffer from some traumatic memories, and just the contact. You know how you feel better if somebody just says, you know, I'm here for you. These beings are here for us, and we can be there for them. And it can bring all sorts of benefits. And who knows, maybe we could have gold coins falling on the floor if we, you know, attempt to do this. Or get information on how to design equipment. Like they made designs on how to, you know, further their communication. So I've also developed a computer program I call the Electric Fortune Cookie. And it's live online. In fact, we can...
Actually, Art, I just got a reading, which,
okay.
So I'd originally intended to be doing readings throughout the showing of the video, which I forgot to do. So I just asked, this is the first time I've used EFC since we started, and I asked, are ghosts real? And our answer was, as you can read on the board, thank you, messenger, cry out for wonderful, festival, turbulent. So I thought it was interesting that messenger and cry out came up right next to each other, because, you know, a messenger would cry out, and this is out of 6,500 words. So, and, you know, I'm thinking while I'm asking it, another question I wanted to ask is, you know, if ghosts are real, could they communicate to us through this random word generating website? You know, because I feel like they need like the word medium, you know, they need a medium to communicate through. So maybe this is one day they could, one way that they could do that. Who knows, you know, it's just a curious thing to wonder about.
I bring something out. So a lot of near-death experiences when people, when the spirit leaves their bodies, they go to a white light, and
I'm sorry.
I think like ghosts like transition to something even more dimensional, more deeper, or another dimension. In other words, you know, the notion of going to a white light and merging with that light. The ghost actually transcends into something else beyond its not physical form, but its shape, which resembles the third dimensional being. If you know what I'm trying to say.
I think I get what you mean with this, and that's what I wanted to say about how I thought it was funny that Seth arrived just because of your name, because I have a friend, Nishay, who teaches classes at UPenn, and I recently filmed one of her classes, which was on this book called Oversoul 7, which is by the same author as this book Seth Speaks, which is about mediumship, and this woman, Jane Roberts, who, she called it Seth Speaks, but she says that, you know, she didn't write it. Like, she's the author, but she said Seth spoke through her, so this is actually Seth's book, and he, like, you know, supposedly is enlightening her with all of this information about, like, the universe and spiritual stuff and the afterlife. And, you know, like, for example, one thing the book discusses how everybody has got their hands, and the hand has 5 fingers. So, like, one analogy you can make is that, like, you know, a person is like a finger on a hand, and they have to find, like, their other, you know, people in their soul group, you know, to complete their life's mission. And those people, like, in a way, they're so connected, you know, there's part of the same thing, separate parts of the same thing. And it's a really great book, both Oversoul 7 and Seth Speaks. And you can now watch that class, which I filmed, on YouTube, because our students gave her permission to put the class up on YouTube. So I would recommend you guys look that up. It's, I don't know, I should try to find it. I'll find the site for you guys. If you guys want to know, you know, you can get our information, and we'll send it to you.
I was going to say, speaking of books, one person I'm interested in psychology. The person I always admired was Carl Jung. I was fascinated with this book, Memories, Dreams, and Reflections. Because, you know, here's a world-renowned psychologist that always spoke in pretty scientific language most of his life because he had to. Because he had to appeal to a scientific community with credibility. But when he was 83 years old, he narrated this story of his life. I don't know, has anyone ever read it? Memories, Dreams? Very good book. Because in his elder years, he talks a lot about the spirit world. And it's Carl Jung speaking, so it has a certain authority. And a couple of things he said, I remember, were real sort of paradigm shifts for me. And one thing he said was, I became this, you know, world famous person that in some ways affected the course of Western civilization, Western culture. He said that actually I was just once a youth stumbling in the dark, looking for a direction in life. And he said I guess he had a conviction at some time in his youth that I had to answer questions that were posed to my ancestors that they couldn't solve.
Well, yeah.
They could not resolve. And they came down to me. And he said that became the impetus of his life, of actually all his psychology, Jungian psychology, trying to solve things that his ancestors died without being able to solve. And then sometime late in his life, to add to that, he was talking to a patient, you know, he did dream analysis. And this woman had a very interesting dream. She said she was elderly, and she died actually a short time after this experience. And she was in a room in a lecture hall in the spiritual realm, in the spirit realm. And she was waiting for the lecturer. And she was waiting and waiting. And then she turned to this person next to her in the lecture hall. This is in the dream. She was narrating to Jung. She said, "Where's the lecturer?" I said, "You're the lecturer." You're the lecturer. And she said, "Why me? I just got here." And they said, the woman said to her in the dream, "That's why. You had the most experience on the earth plane. We're a little bit outdated here. But you've been living, there's new things that have happened on the earth plane that we need to know about." It's funny because we always think of it the opposite way. Like the spirits in the spiritual realm have so much to tell us. But according to this, memories, dreams, reflections, it works the opposite, the other way as well. Like things that evolve on, the earth scientifically, culturally.
We wanted to learn from her.
They need to learn from us. So I guess there's a motivation on both sides.
I'm a big fan of Jung as well, and I read about Freud versus Jung and how originally they were members of the same school of thought, and they saw eye to eye on a lot of stuff, and then Jung kind of got more into the spiritual realm, and he found meaning, and he actually coined the term synchronicity. So he found meaning in random events where Freud would say that's nothing, that doesn't mean anything, it's just random, it's not meaningful, there's nothing trying to communicate anything to you, and then if you are reading into things like that, then you probably have some kind of mental problem because it doesn't mean anything. But yeah, Jung, that's why I prefer Jung, because Jung was open to synchronicity. And that's what we're trying to do with the EFC here, is kind of really delve deeply into that phenomena. And I've been administering surveys, where I ask people to use it and write down their answers and their reaction to the answers. And it's been really fascinating for me. So I didn't bring my surveys with me today, but I hope we can meet again and do that when we do an EFC presentation, if you guys are into that.
Yes, the electric fortune cookie. Oh, we have another one. We put in Carl Jung.
I have a question. Would it be okay if we lowered the fan?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's actually a little cool.
You know what, let's see. If it
is October.
Actually, if you turn this, that probably, I don't, can I just shut these lights off? It's gonna, you have to pull it down?
Pull it once.
Yeah, pull it off. He pointed those off. No, turn it back on again.
So that's off there.
Doesn't look like it's going.
If I can turn the lights off, just leave it to the front.
Throw it off because we do have these side
Let's
lights.
just see how it is. Are folks
It's gonna like-
comfortable with that?